Welcome to this explainer. As researchers, we're all hyper-aware that working with animal subjects is an immense privilege. It's a privilege that carries, frankly, a profound ethical weight. So today, we're focusing squarely on the foundational ethical requirements for animal research. Whether you're a seasoned PI writing your, 50th protocol, or a brand new tech just stepping up to the bench for the first time, having a firm, practitioner-grade grasp of these standards is absolutely critical. We're going to look at the rules, the oversight, and those daily welfare obligations that keep our work both humane and scientifically valid.
Okay, let's dive into this. Sentience is morally relevant. Animal welfare always takes precedence over data. That philosophy, it sets the tone for absolutely everything we do in the lab. Look, it's incredibly easy to get caught up in the pressure of publishing and gathering data. We've all been there. But rigorous ethical standards aren't just bureaucratic red tape. They are the literal bedrock of good science. If our ethical foundation is cracked, our data's integrity is completely compromised. So here is the life of a protocol, essentially our roadmap for today. First up, ethical design and the 3 Rs. Second, IACUC review and oversight. Third, execution and welfare. Fourth, a case study on unexpected distress. And finally, best practices and culture. Let's get to it.
Section 1, ethical design and the 3 Rs.
Before you ever snap on a pair of gloves or draft even a single line of a protocol, you have to understand the balance. Animals can suffer, period, and their sentience demands our respect. Meanwhile, public trust relies entirely on us getting this right every single time. We design a study, we are actively weighing the scientific need, like, say, modeling a complex infectious disease, against the potential harms to the subjects. It's a delicate balancing act. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that this framework was established by Russell and Birch way back in 1959. 1959, yet it remains the absolute gold standard today. We're talking about the 3 Rs. First, replacement. Can we use computer models or cell cultures instead of animals? Then, reduction, using the absolute minimum number of subjects needed for statistical significance. And finally, refinement, minimizing pain through things like better analgesics or non-invasive tech. And remember, this is a continuous requirement, not just a one-time checkbox. You see, you apply the 3 Rs sequentially, but also continuously across every single facet of an animal's experience in your lab. It starts right there in your experimental design, dictates the specific methods you choose, and trickles all the way down to how the animals are housed and the daily care they receive. You should literally always be looking for new opportunities to apply the 3 Rs throughout the entire lifespan of your study.
Section 2, IACUC review and oversight. Once your study is ethically designed, well, you hit the approval gateways. Science is global, obviously, but the gatekeepers, they depend on your region. If you're in the US, you'll go through the IACOUC, guided by the Animal Welfare Act and PHS policy. Over in the UK, it's the AWRB, governed by the Animals Act of 1986. And in the EU, you're dealing with local committees enforcing Directive 2010/63/EU. But here's the thing. Regardless of the geographical differences, whether it's an IACOUC or an AWRB, the global norms of accountability, training, and compliance remain incredibly strict everywhere. And that brings us to the absolute, non-negotiable golden rule of this entire explainer. Protocol review and approval must happen before any animal work begins. No exceptions. You cannot start a quick pilot study. You can't just do a little test run to see if something works. Formal training and explicit committee sign-off are the only valid gateways into that animal facility. Section 3, execution and welfare obligations. So the crucial point is once you're approved, theory finally meets reality on the lab bench. And the protocol you got approved, that is the exact protocol you must execute. Adherence is mandatory. It's not a suggestion. You have to follow it exactly as it's written. If you find you need to tweak a method, actually, let's be clear, if you need to change anything at all, you must stop, report the deviation, and get an amendment first. You're also explicitly on the hook for monitoring animal welfare regularly and reporting any adverse events promptly to the oversight committee and your veterinarian staff. A massive part of this execution phase is this concept of humane endpoints. So, what are they? They're predetermined criteria, strictly enforced to prevent or relieve unnecessary pain and distress. They must be clearly defined in advance, for example, mandating euthanasia if an animal hits 20% weight loss or develops a specific tumor burden. If an animal reaches that endpoint, the required action has to occur immediately to stop further suffering. No delays. Section 4, case study.
Unexpected distress.
Let's put these rules to the test with a scenario. Imagine it's late on a Friday afternoon. A researcher observes unexpected distress in their study animals. Let's say severe lethargy that wasn't outlined anywhere in the protocol. But they are incredibly close to a major breakthrough, so they make a call. They decide to just continue monitoring to, quote, get more data without pausing for an ethics review.
Look at this situation. What's wrong with this scenario, and what should happen next? I want you to really think about how you, or maybe your colleagues in your own lab, would react if you saw this playing out on a random Tuesday afternoon. And this brilliantly illustrates one of the hardest, but honestly most important lessons in our field. Continuing for data without an amendment is a severe ethics violation. Unexpected distress has to trigger an immediate pause in protocol review. The strict requirement here is to contact your oversight body right away and amend the protocol. Remember our very first principle today? Animal welfare always takes precedence over data. You just never compromise welfare for an extra data point.
Section 5, Best Practices and Culture.
So how do we actually build a lab environment that prevents these types of violations from happening in the first place? Well, a culture of noncompliance usually doesn't start with some massive, intentional, villainous act. It starts with minor lapses. Taking shortcuts, telling yourself, oh, I'll do it just this once. That quickly snowballs into systemic failure. Operating under assumptions like everyone does it this way is never, ever a valid defense when the auditors show up. And finally, working in isolation causes drift. If you avoid written policies and peer checks, your ethical standards will just gradually slip without anyone even noticing, until it's too late.
Let's move on and see how this builds into a concrete framework for those inevitable gray areas you are definitely going to face in research. Step 1, clearly identify the ethical question at hand. Step 2, consult your stakeholders. Please do not make these decisions alone in a vacuum. Step 3, evaluate your feasible options and see which aligns best with the principles we've been talking about. And finally, make your decision and thoroughly document your rationale, because written evidence protects both you and the animals.
To lock this all in, here is the ultimate best practice checklist that every single practitioner needs to tape to their lab wall. 1. Ethics committee approval is secured before work starts. 2. All personnel are fully trained and qualified. 3. The 3 Rs are actively applied at every single stage. 4. Protocol amendments are filed before making changes. 5. Welfare monitoring is continuous. And 6. Humane endpoints are strictly defined and enforced. Guys, this is the roadmap for compliant, rigorous, reproducible research.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, really critical question to reflect on. Does your lab's culture treat compliance as a simple, annoying administrative checklist, or do you view it as the very foundation of good, reproducible science? The ethical use of animals isn't a hurdle to your research. It's the standard of excellence that defines it. Thank you so much for engaging with this material today, and keep pushing for rigorous, responsible science.